summoned you here for a purpose.
TransformYourGame.net.
Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back to the 17th episode of the Transform Your Game podcast. My name is Richard, and I'll be serving as your host and moderator here today. It is my esteemed privilege to also be able to introduce my three co-hosts that are more than meets the eye. Kent.
Soundwave superior, Constructicons inferior.
Kai.
Please be excited.
And Joel.
Hey there.
In the last couple of weeks, we've had some truly enjoyable opportunities to interview first the brand manager for the Transformers TCG, Drew Nolasco, and second, the man behind the curtains of the currently ongoing Deck Tech Challenge collaboration, Lee McAlpin over at Bleaked Up Productions. I swore this week that we'd be back to a full cast, and we delivered. However, if you haven't had a chance to listen to those interviews yet, I'd highly encourage you to check them out on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you meet your podcast needs. If you're feeling particularly cheeky, maybe even give us a little subscriber action. Anyhow, it is that time of the cast wherein I sound the housekeeping alarm. And first on the docket is actually a bit of good news in the midst of what is certainly a tumultuous time for us all. And it is important right now that we stand in solidarity with those greatly suffering against injustice and help in whatever ways we're able. That being said, I think that for us, providing our listeners and fellow players a brief respite and something joyful like their hobby is just one way we hope to be able to fill that obligation right now. I did promise good news, however, so that actual news is that we got word just this week that the Hunter Burt Memorial Open in Hearst, Texas looks to be back on for the dates of August 7th through the 9th, and they're intending to host a TFTCG tournament on the Saturday within that window. Now, we know that travel in this time can be scary or difficult, but I think that everyone here, at least in this podcast, has plans to attend as long as it looks to be safe to do so. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's in Texas, so we would kind of be remiss not to go. In other in-person bot-flipping action news, we've all had the cards in our hands for a week or so now, and I've been trying to play a little bit of Sealed with my brother and some people over webcam. I know Kent and Joel have partaken with each other for a few games, and I also think that Kai is participating alongside myself in the Vector Sigma Steel Release tourney over webcam. So why do I bring this up, you ask? Well, beyond the fact of how satisfying it is to have the real cards in front of me and flip bots in front of me, this is actually our topic for the day. We're talking tips, tricks, and titans in our first installment of what is hopefully a long-running series of episodes, the Transform Your Game podcast's very own Unpacking Sealed.
Woo.
Kai told me earlier when I suggested the name that it sounded a little corny.
Yeah.
It does, but I love wordplay, so take it or leave it, that's the name of the series. A side note before we begin, but we did release a general sealed deck construction primer on our site, transformyourgame.net, just last week, that I think people listening will find helpful as kind of a base level guide for limited and sealed deck construction. Also, people out there listening might want to have Computron's lab up. It's no apostrophe in the web address because we will be mentioning specific cards by name during this discussion, but for the sake of flow, etc., we probably won't be describing what they actually do. Kent, would you like to help us start delving into the meat and potatoes of today?
Absolutely. There's a lot of cool things about the way the cards are packaged in Titan Master's Attack. The first thing to take note of is the characters and distribution of your pool. Now, that's going to break down differently than other sets. Every rare and uncommon bot, it has a body mode. It will come with a head. All right? So I believe that, and please guys correct me if I'm wrong, but every rare and uncommon bot is a Titan Master. Is that correct?
I think so, if you're counting Sky Shadow as a Titan Master.
Okay, yeah.
Which they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Sky Shadow's the only one that, like, quote-unquote, bucks the trend.
Okay, so
Kinda.
yeah, I guess he's not, and thanks for that correction there. And the common and SRTs that have a bot mode, those are non-Titan Masters. Those are just the regular characters that we are used to dealing with. So all your rares and uncommons besides Sky Shadow pieces will come with a head in the package. All
Actually, I believe the Sky Shadow pieces come with a head too.
Oh, they come with a head too? That's
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I'll say.
yeah, we did. We busted several boxes. I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure that every time that we opened a Sky Shadow piece, he did come with a head.
We have that on camera, so we can probably verify that later if we wanted to.
Right.
No, it does. It does. There's no need to verify it. I've watched enough box openings to know that's the thing.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, thanks to our co-host that corrected me on this. So every uncommon, every rare bot comes with a head with it, and then the common and SRTs come with a stratagem. If you pull Autobot Whirl, you're probably going to get a pop-up attack. Just kidding. That is a reference to one of our videos.
It's not funny if you explain it, Kent.
True. So basically, half of the packs that you open will have bodies and heads, and the other half will have the normal bots that we're used to with stratagems. So if you're thinking you're opening 6 packs, it's not going to absolutely be this way because the packs are randomized. But an average would be 3 Titan Masters with 3 heads, 3 non-Titan Masters with a stratagem. Would you guys say that that's correct, or does the rarity kind of throw that off?
No, that's been what I've kind of seen, generally speaking. Like every randomized 6. I tried to keep that in mind when I was opening my boxes. I was trying to open them in kind of packs of 6. And they typically fell within that range. Sometimes they would be 4 or 2 in either direction, but...
Cool. Yeah, and the stratagems, most of them are not the best for sealed. Some, maybe aren't even the best for constructed, and some are really, really amazing in both, but they would require a very specific, pool of cards to work with. So stratagems generally are not in my personal thinking of hey, I'm going to build a deck. If I pull a stratagem, let's say I pull Crankcase and a stratagem, hey, that's cool to get both, but for a tournament setting, you're probably not going to play Crankcase's stratagem. Even though I think it's a cool ability, it's just not what you need in sealed right now.
Yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind for that is that there's just basically every one of the stratagems that says you can play extra star cards. The only star card in this set is Lucky Dodge. So unless you open Night Racer and Stealth Mission and 2 Lucky Dodges, it's not gonna. None of those are gonna matter.
No.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Okay, so for team construction, you're gonna. So when back in Wave 4, we were pretty much spoiled because each pack came with 2 sets of bots, one large, one small, and it was much easier to make wider teams because of the you were getting guaranteed 6 smaller bots, whereas in this set you were getting all rather large bots except for some spare 5s, 6s, and 7s, but even most of the Titan Masters outside of Fangry and Horrible are fairly large, and then the heads as well can range from 1 to 4, so they it's not like constructed where you have the freedom to choose and mold your deck to whatever star cost you want, because whatever heads you pull you have to play with those Titan Masters. So a lot of times you'll probably end up staying 3 wide. There have been rare scenarios that I've seen where you can do 4 wide. Doesn't help if you open for Improvised Shield, but that's besides the point. So you'll usually be 3 wide, and then there are some specific characters as well that you probably won't be able to fit on your team unless you open a 1 or 2 star head, and that's Megatron, Optimus, and Skull Smasher. So just be wary of those. It's also not particularly great to go 2 wide. So if that's the only way you can play those characters, I would probably try and see if there's some other venture of being able to play 3 wide before you go 2 wide, because there's not actually a lot of orange in this sealed in the battle cards. It's more there's more black init mix, like orange black black or blue black or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's your being wider means that you'll be able to take advantage of the small pierce damage when it matters. So just keep that stuff in mind.
A quick side note: I did open one 4-wide team in one. I told you I was like keeping track of like my packs of 6 when I was opening my boxes. I was lucky enough to open a Night Racer as one of my SRTs, and in that pack of 6, I opened a Brawn and a Night Racer, and then I also opened both Fangry. Oh my God, what's the other? I opened Fangry and the what's the other guy? The 6-star. Horrible. Why could I not think of his name?
Wow.
Horrible.
Yeah, how did you miss that guy?
It's the Scourge of Constructed. Maybe I'm repressing it. Maybe I'm like.
It's the Scourge of Constructed and Sealed.
That's true too. Look at Sealed too. But I opened both of them with a 1 and a 2-star head, and I think that adds up to I think that adds up to the 7 plus 8. Yeah. I was gonna say because I wanted to make sure that it actually added up to 25. Probably should have done that before I brought up the story, but I had like a 4-star team available or a 4-wide team available to me, and all the characters were pretty nuts. So like that was really cool. But that's kind of an outlier. I mean, Night Racer being one of the 5 stars in the set and being super rare is another thing that precludes 4-wide teams from happening. So I also think it's going to be pretty hard to do 3-wide if you have like all Titan Masters, right? Mm-hmm. Just because they're kind of expensive. So if you do get all Titan Masters, you might end up having to take like a 2-tall team, which would kind of suck.
Yeah, so going along with that, to follow up about the Titan Masters, let's talk about the heads real quick. So, like Kent was saying, you will get as many heads as there are body modes. So you'll always be able to link those up. You get one. If you only get one body, you'll just have the one head that came with it. If you open 4 bodies, you're gonna have 4 heads to choose from. So it'll give you a lot of flexibility for being able to choose your team. So in general, probably the best heads for Sealed are the ones that grant HP. Having more HP is obviously very strong. It's probably also true in Constructed, but it's going to give you it's like it gives you more functional extra defense because this set is very as Kai was saying, focused around black. So the pierce damage, it just gives you more time to last in battle. So yeah, it gives insulation from non-attack damage as well, because there's a lot of that, like Cammy and Crash, and it earns you more time to have that character in combat, which is probably the most important resource in Limited.
Mm-hmm.
So the next best heads after the health heads are most likely the offensive-minded heads, like the ones that get bold, or the ones that get pierce, or other attack buffs, like just more attack damage. That can help you to outpace your opponents. Cards like Apex and the heads that buff defense are statically probably the next best heads, just because they have measurable impact against your opponent's ability to push their own damage. So again, just giving you more time to be in the fight. Cards like Doom Shot and heads that grant tough are definitely the worst in this seal pool. The Pierce happens. I mean, Pierce is just happening all over the place in this set, and tough isn't going to do you a whole lot because the blue isn't going to. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of useful blue. So Doom Shot would likely make your body the biggest bot on your team, and that character is taking a beating can be really rough on your ability to push damage over the time of the game. So tough is definitely worse than bold because this format just is mostly not about blue pips, it's mostly about black and orange, and both of those pips are benefited by people playing bold, by people having more life total. So yeah, tough just really isn't very useful, and black pips kind of invalidate the blue pips over time in a limited game anyway. So anyway, speaking of pips, Richard, do you want to introduce our listeners to the part that's less of us noting things that are important and more about doing or usual discussion-y type of things?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think it's irregular for us on the cast for me to have anything longer than about 2 minutes where I'm not talking. with the exception of maybe one of Kent's infamous rants about things like.
Wait,
about,
when does that happen?
Anytime anyone brings up the B word.
Yes. Tune in for next week when we talk about the H word.
Oh boy.
Well, I think Lee coined it in the interview last week, and I thought it was pretty awesome when he did actually. But I think that like it's hard to really argue a lot of the points that were made from you guys, right, about like the character building for the team construction portion of things. I think it's not that it's like more formulaic or rote, but I think that generally speaking, like team construction has more overlapping between it from sealed format to sealed format. Like, I think you're looking generally to do the same things unless they introduce like some wild new mechanic. And while I will say this, while Titan Masters are kind of like a wild new frontier as far as mechanics go, I do think that they are less impactful to sealed than they are to constructed, mostly because like the heads are very unlikely to be relevant attackers in sealed, just because you can't like overload your deck with orange-black pips or have a ton of weapons that really work. Like, you know, Fusion Bore is still good and it's in this Wave 5 format, but you're not going to have 3 of them in your deck, right? For your little dude to attack with. So I think those are things to really consider in regard to that. But I do think that like the deck construction, the battle deck construction, is probably a little bit more contentious. It kind of varies more person to person. I think it has less of a consensus on it. You know, we put out that primer, I guess, typically, like I put it out on the site, right? But like, I think that even amongst this group, that isn't the gospel. It's just like a general guide. It's a guide that I think is helpful, particularly for people who are looking to get into sealed, get more involved, and look for some kind of advice to help along the way. But I wanted to start this discussion part after my, getting all these words that built up out by asking you guys around the figurative table, what do you typically focus on when you start going through your sealed pool, when you start cracking your packs?
Well, for me, obviously the bots have to come first. They are the stars of the game, and where games will generally be won is your decisions with your bots. So I think that goes without saying, but besides that, I look at weapons first. Oh, it's a weapon, and it like does even, one attack buff to your bot, like that is important to me. Like any weapons I see, they're like auto includes for me.
Yeah, so I generally actually open them all at the same time, so bots and then battle card, bot, battle cards. But as I'm opening battle cards, I'll sort them by pips so that I have like some idea of how my battle deck is going to look, because you can have this fantastic lineup of like double horrible or something, and then you just open like no good black pips. So things like that will influence your decision. So I think it's easier just to see like, oh, I have double improvised shield and a lot of orange, so I can play. So when I'm looking at my bots, I can choose like the aggressive ones more likely over other characters.
Side note, double horrible sounds like it would be insane.
Partially, yes.
Okay, go ahead, Joel. I'm sorry.
Well, I agree with Kai. I also lay my cards all out by pip, not by action or upgrade, but by pip. And I actually probably kind of work backwards, because you get so few cards to make your pool out of. You don't really have a whole lot that you don't use. So I actually sort of look through and go, well, this card's terrible, I'm not using that, and I'm not using that, and I'm not using that, and I'm not using that. Okay, cool, so now here's my deck, and I only have to cut 2 or 3 cards, because these other cards are completely unplayable, or something like that. So I feel like that makes my job easier. And, I could be convinced to go back on those cards, but when they're just, not very good, or something that's basically unplayable based on the lineup that I have already devised. Hey, I have this, I have all these guys, I have 25 stars, oh look, Lucky Dodge. I know I want to make a meme out of Lucky Dodge, but Lucky Dodge is a star card and unplayable if you've decided this is my 25 star lineup.
Yeah. Joel, do you ever give any consideration to cards that you got to go over during our spoiler season countdown? Is that going to be any impact on your decisions?
Maybe, but Kent and I were having a discussion about this today. When cards get revealed, I feel like sometimes I wet blanketed so many cards or so many bots, and then afterwards this was revealed or this was revealed and this was revealed, and I'm like, okay, fine, that card is actually really, really good in that case. Not Whirl, but
I actually think okay. In Sealed, Whirl seems nuts. Actually,
so in the Sealed pool that Kent and I played, I had Whirl, and I decided to play him just because he was such a big ball of stats, and that really still wasn't enough. I mean, he was super unimpressive.
Really?
Agree. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's not what I would have.
The no defense is just, man, it's rough.
You just gotta open enhanced power cells.
Yeah.
Because that card is insane. Every time someone has played it, I told you when I played my brother, I played webcam matches of Sealed. Basically, like anytime someone has played enhanced power cell, they won that game. Because like it was basically just like take an extra turn with that character.
Mm.
It was really good. I've been really impressed with that card. I think that to answer the question though, instead of our usual 10-minute tangent of things, I think I probably have the most similarity with Kent. I think I generally look through my characters first when it comes to breaking down Sealed. I think part of that is actually the intention of WotC. I think that they package the battle cards separately so that when people are opening packs, they pay more attention to the characters first. I could be reading into that. That's not like gospel or anything, right? But that is generally what I kind of like think about when that happens. So I try to organize basically like every combination of characters I could have that makes a playable team. I envision that before I kind of do what Kai was talking about. Well, like I lay out my cards by pip. I actually also separate them by action or upgrade, generally speaking. So I have like 2 piles for each pip. But that way, like once I see what my pool actually looks like, I can change between the different teams that I have like already tabulated in my head. Part of that is that I'm mostly familiar with cards by the time I'm playing Sealed. Like because we do spoiler season, because like I compulsively look at spoilers when they start coming out. I pretty much know like the star counts and like where generally I think characters want to lean as far as Sealed deck construction before we ever actually get there. So I think that helps me in regard to that. On that note, though, I think one of the things we were talking about, one of the things that was really interesting you brought up, Joel, was that there was a bunch of cards that you said like you wouldn't play, and that was kind of the way that you start eliminating cards from your battle deck, which I find super interesting because the next question I had like in mind for asking you guys about this was the polar opposite. I wanted to talk about what kind of cards are typically auto-includes in your opinion.
So for me, I generally every time people ask about like Sealed and like tips and whatnot, I always say just play all the orange cards. Like even if it's like Emergency Barricade where you're realistically not putting it on a character, you just want to flip the orange, man. It feels good when you swing for that extra damage and get the bot. But yeah, I generally just always play all orange. In this format, I probably wouldn't play Hold Down because there's like 5 tanks and most of them want to attack in bot mode or body mode, so that I probably wouldn't play Hold Down. But all the other oranges I'd probably easily consider, and all weapons as well. Almost every weapon or something that gives +1, I'd also heavily consider those.
Yeah, for auto-includes, I would definitely say weapons, and other things that I think about for auto-include would be things that are considered constructed playable in general, like something that would go in any constructed deck, like Camion Crash, or Improvised Shield, or to the lesser degree, Handheld Blaster, or something like that.
You just hate it so much.
Well, I don't hate Handheld Blaster, but in this format, no, I don't. It gives bold 1.
Well put.
Oh my god.
That was okay. Someone needs to clip that. That was the best. That's the funniest thing Joel's ever said on this podcast.
So yeah, I'm also gonna include basically any weapon, and if I do end up having to cut cards, I'm probably not going to be cutting ones that give attack bonuses, at least in Titan Master's attacks Sealed, because there just really isn't a very good way to block. You really can't defend. I noticed when we played, I mean, there's just not that much blue, and when you're playing guys like Whirl that have 0 defense already, it really it doesn't matter. So anything that's gonna let you hit harder to end the game faster by taking your opponent down. I mean, anything with black pips, I was wanting to keep in my deck just so that I can have guaranteed damage, because the Pierce is virtually never going to outrun the attack damage. So you're never going to Pierce 7, attack for 5 or something like that. That's just really not going to happen, because you're not attacking with anybody that attacks for 0. I don't think there are any bots in this format that do that. So
for me, it's all about like anything to buff the attack. Like when Joel and I played our sealed pools, like I had pulled Braun, and I had actually pulled, I think, another melee character. It's slipping my mind which one at the moment. But I also pulled 2 hand-to-hand combat. And normally that's not a card that I would probably play, especially since blue pips don't really matter a whole lot in Titan Masters Attack Sealed. But in this case, it was phenomenal. Like I can either take out one of their weapons and like hit them for a +3 also. Like that was great. So anything that like buffs attack as far as actions, once you're beyond the weapon point, because that is something that becomes a static buff that is there every turn after.
On that note of anything that basically buffs attack, how have you guys felt about supporting fire?
I love that card. That card's actually better than people realize in Constructed.
Okay.
Yeah. I expressed that I was like pretty interested in it when we were doing spoilers, but like, yeah, go play with that card. Like, oh, you need to hit Horrible? Well, go for it. You need to like hit Galaxy Optimus? Go for it. You need to hit Pounce. That card is stronger than people think. There is a reason why there are no pips on that card.
Yeah, I think that card's been really, really good for me, and really good against me in Sealed when I've played. When someone plays it, my heart just sinks a little bit, because I'm like, no, my Megatron. even though if you can play him with a 1-star head, he's still good, right? Like in Sealed, there's a ball of stats. But like, I have just seen like it be game ending for the opponent if you can pick your right spot with it, right? So like, I think Braun is like maybe the staplest character in the Sealed format, if you ask me. Just being 5 stars and having like guaranteed Pierce, basically, is so powerful. I had one suited up the other day with the brass knuckles, and I gave supporting fire to him and swung and hit all 5 colors. And I just went like 5 Pierce 5 into an untapped guy, which KO'd him, and it felt so good. Like, it felt so good to just like absolutely destroy my opponent's next turn. I think that card's really good, and it is something that buffs attack. I think the reason I brought it up, Kent, was because it's a blank pip. I know that like blank pips, generally speaking, are like kind of hard to justify including most of the time, but it's just so powerful.
That card is strong and Sealed and Constructed. Like, try it out. Just throw a couple in your deck and see how it changes the dynamic of your matches. It's the same way that like Razor Claw and SRTB from Wave 1 did, but this is a lot different because you get to pick which character that you are attacking with. It gives that to whatever character you want, and then you get to attack whatever character you want. That card is strong. Like, don't sleep on it.
Well, in regards to deck building, I wanted to ask you guys if you had any personal preferences that you've kind of like found amongst yourselves when you're building, particularly when it comes to like the last few flex slots in a deck, right? Like the last like 3 or 4 cards, maybe the quality is wanting for many of those cards. But what things have you found that like work really well for you, or have been just things that you feel drawn to doing in regards to building your sealed pools?
Just flexibility, like cards that could be useful against a wide variety of matches. Like, say, Holomatter Projector. Everybody knows I love that card. But if you're playing against Quake, Camion Crash, Horrible, or whatever else that's trying to deal direct damage to you, it can help. And then it's also just a static, +1 defense, which can be helpful in a very aggressive format, since there's just not a lot of blue pips running around in this set. Then you add on the fact that it's a green pip and you can just pick it up. I mean, like, it's the perfect image of a flexible card in those last few slots.
So for me, I generally go with what cards left in the pile that would offer some sort of utility, like in multiple fashions. So one of the cards I usually cut out pretty easily is like Regenerative Core or something like Scout Armor. But if you're missing a few cards and you need to put like 1 or 2 cards in, I would probably consider stuff like that, because Regenerative Core can at least give you a play for the turn and heal your guy 1, and Scout Armor can basically give you a play for the turn and draw you 2 cards when that character dies. So it's not like it's wholly unplayable, but it's like stuff that you wouldn't consider, but you have to because it's a limited pool. So with things like that, I just look for like utility and like multiple uses.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I kind of build my deck backwards, I guess. I have too many cards in it and start cutting things, because that's just always worked better for me. When I would do limited for Magic, I would always do that. I mean, if I find that I need to put like 3 more cards in my deck, I'm just like my head's in my hands going, oh my goodness, my so bad I can't even find enough cards before I want to cut things out. So if something has to be added in, that means that there's really not anything playable. I mean, y'all are talking about something that's going to give me utility. I can't imagine that you feel that about any of your cards at that point. Anyway, so I'm just really looking for pips. I'll look for green pips so that I can put useful cards that I don't want to play, that I only had in for the pips in the first place, like an Improvised Shield or something like that. I don't want to play an Improvised Shield. I want to flip it. So I'm going to pick up that green card so I can at least throw the Improvised Shield back into my deck. And for the most part, cards with a green pip at least have some sort of utility, even if I didn't feel that it was particularly useful. They could surprise me at times, like Reprocess did during Wave 4. So yeah, I mean, at the very end of my deck, I don't think that you're going to have that many cards that you're excited to play out of your seal pool, you're having to cut cards at the end nearly as often as you're just sort of throwing some chaff in at the end because these pips work for you. So green pips for that, or black if somehow I cut a black pip, which I doubt, or orange if I cut an orange pip, because the card was just completely unplayable in my card pool. Like if you're playing like all Autobots or something, and you have some mag rays, and you're like, well, I can't play that. But I guess I'm going to put it in there just for the pips.
I think that, Joel, I'm a little hurt because I think you kind of stole my answer a little bit. I'll forgive you. I'm that kind of person. I'm bigger than that. But I think that, like, generally speaking, near the end of like deck building, I do 2 things. One, I try to fit as many green pip cards as I possibly can into my deck that are not completely unreasonable to include. Mostly because I just think that there is a lot of utility to making sure the composition of your deck is a certain way. Since I think we talked about this earlier, right? That like combat is, generally speaking, the most important resource to manage when it comes to limited. So having good pips in your actual deck and not trapped in your hand is such an imperative that I'm basically trying to like jam green pips into my deck to help me ensure over the course of the game that my flips during combat are going to be as good as possible. And on top of that, one of the other things that's like competing with that is I generally try to have as even a split of actions and upgrades as I possibly can in my deck. Now, there are a lot of pools where you just can't get to like 12-13 or 13-13 if you're trying to play 26, right? Like, so, but there are plenty of pools where, you know, when you lay it all out, your best cards probably look like 9 actions and then 16 upgrades, right? And like, I think that you're really hurting your ability to use all parts of your turn over the course of the game when you have a split like that. I typically try to have it be at the least 10-15 as a split. I normally try to get it 11-14 if I can. So that in this format, what that means is a lot of the time I am, after I build my deck, cutting my worst upgrade, which is normally an armor because defense is in this set mostly, right? And adding in a copy of High Five. Now, High Five is bad. There's like no real. I'm sorry. Like it's funny. It's bad. It sucks because High Five is like it's fun, right? It's like a fun card. It's got interesting imagery on it, and it feels good to like have like friends on your team. But it doesn't have any utility once you're down to one character. It only has a green pip. What it does do is it makes sure that you can use an action on your turn, particularly because weapons and health-giving utilities are so premium to be playing and including in your deck that like oftentimes you're going to find yourself with more upgrades and actions to do. So I think doing things like including a singleton copy of Mission Briefing, which is a common, right, like is a totally reasonable thing to do just because it makes sure that you get to use both parts of your turn, right? So that's, I think, like the things that I generally try to do when it comes to like the flex slots, quote unquote, near the end of my deck building. I was noticing actually while you were talking about pips, Joel, that I actually skipped over a question. Do you guys mind if I rewind and go back a question real quick?
Go for it.
Okay, so what considerations do you guys make specifically for pips once you're done with the auto includes? Like, do you put emphasis on including black pips? Are you trying to maximize whites in your deck? Like,
I feel like we've probably talked about this quite a bit already. I'm auto including weapons, but then on top of that, auto including black and orange. I guess I'll find a way to intentionally put a couple of whites in my pool if I can, just to give myself more of a chance to hit more black or orange pips when I'm flipping. Because like I said, most of my deck is built around just the attack combat flips. I'm thinking less about the actions and the upgrades. I mean, of course, I want to have an even number of actions and upgrades. That's not always going to be possible because you just don't really have that kind of choice, like you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. So, what you do get to do every single turn, no matter what, is attack. You don't have a choice. You can't go.
Says the aggro guy.
I don't really want to attack with this guy because I don't want him to get attacked back. I mean, you don't have a choice. You have to attack. So that's why the pip colors, orange and black, are just basically getting auto included. I'm probably not going to have more than one or two of those sitting in my, quote unquote sideboard.
Mm-hmm. That's the second quotable thing you've said in this episode.
What?
What you do get to do is attack. I thought that, I'm just saying, like, someone needs to write, we can have this on recorded so we can go back and let's do whatever we want, right? But like, someone needs to write this down for t-shirt ideas. Huh. That's what I'm thinking. We just need to like keep a compilation of stuff Joel says over the course of the podcast.
We need to take a snapshot of him opening Whirl on that box opening. Put that on a shirt.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Me and my quarantine hair and everything.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing so loud. I'm sure it's impossible to listen to. Anyway, I think that. Do you guys have anything else to add on the pip bit, or do you think we kind of covered it already?
I think we got it. I mean, like, everybody's going to want to play orange and try and push as much damage as possible, so...
Do you guys think that... So, Handheld Blaster is probably the only blue card I really... Maybe not the only non-rare blue card I think maybe I'd auto-include. I don't know. That's probably too big of a statement, because now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's too big a statement.
I think you've got stuff like Scouting Mission, and that card's absolutely great.
Brass Knuckles, Energon,
Brass Knuckles! I even talked about Brass Knuckles earlier.
Tripwire.
I don't count rares.
Combat.
You can't count.
That's why
rares.
I went back on Energon Mace, but it's like lock on target. Like there's a lot of actual good playable blues in the set.
That's fair. I guess, and it doesn't hurt to have like a couple of blues, especially if you have any characters with like basically base 2 defense. Because once you're at like base 2 defense, if any blue you flip means that you're kind of just locking your opponent into the pierce, unless they have some kind of ungodly weapon on them like Fusion Borer. Which, a bummer that card falls off. Because if that card stayed on, it would be absolutely busted in half.
Yeah. By design.
That thing has to fall off, or oh my god.
By design.
Oh, just let me have this. Come on. Actually,
you cannot have that one.
Sound Blaster kind of gets to keep it. If Sound Blaster, like it's in Constructed, not in Sealed, but Sound Blaster kind of gets to keep it forever, which is
Sound Blaster is being slept on. That card is so much better now that Wave 5 has come into play. Yeah, that's another one that people are just like, they're gonna sleep on and then like run into a Sound Blaster deck and get mauled.
I can't wait, because if I'm playing in Sound Blaster, that means I'm probably not playing in Horrible. Yeah, someone tick the little clicker. What do you call those things that like actually count? You just push the button and they count. Is it a clicker?
Probably.
Hey, we need a clicker for how many times we say horrible or the B word.
Extra padding. Anyway.
Or extra padding.
Oh my god. Throw them all in. Just throw them all in.
Let's do it.
Okay. Last question, and then we'll go to the viewer question. I promise. I know I've been dawdling us a bit. Anyway, what do you guys do when considering cards to potentially bring in during best of 3 matches of Sealed, like from the sideboard? I know you kind of briefly mentioned the sideboard earlier, Joel, but I'm kind of talking about like what kind of cards do you think you might be bringing in regard to that?
So in regards to Sealed, whatever you don't put into your deck becomes your side pool, your sideboard. So if you have time, it's a lot harder to do with this set, but try and find something that you can do to like transmog your deck into something else, because you can actually change up any number of characters in your lineup with any number of characters in your sideboard. So example of this, I played against Jesse from Shuffle Bus at EI, and I had Major Prowl, who was a Thundercracker, and Blowpipe. It was a really bad weapon, Battlemaster, but I was playing him against General Megatron, and it's a really hard matchup. But I had Astro Train in my sideboard, so I was basically able to morph my deck into an Astro Train deck to basically like 2-shot the General Megatron, and that kind of took him by surprise and almost won me both the other games outside of like his Powertrain being able to wreck my face the last game. But yeah, things like that your opponent wouldn't normally be expected of in a constructed match, you can do pretty easily. Well, I say easily, but it's much harder to do in Titan Masters. But things like that you can do in Sealed is where you want to look for advantages for.
You could maybe do something like that with like heads too. But
Yeah.
like maybe you change the head to be like Clobber or something.
Yes, that'd probably be like the closest thing you could do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless it's just a completely obvious, this is the absolute only way that you can build your team, then there's lots of options. You could definitely change your team to take advantage of what your opponent's team is, or what kind of cards are in their battle deck. As far as the battle deck is concerned, I usually don't even like any of the cards that I don't have in my battle deck already. If they had any sort of utility, then they would have already been in my battle deck in the first place. Probably. I mean, maybe a card could get switched over, like say Hollow Matter Projector or something. But I don't know why I would have that not in my deck in the first place, because it's highly unlikely you're not going to run into somebody playing some sort of direct damage. They don't have to have Horrible or Quake or something like that. There's just so much direct damage in this set. You would run a card like that already. So
It could be a second Hollow Matter. Like I could totally see a world where you open multiple Hollow Matter projectors in your pool, and you put one in your main deck because it's a green pitch. You can pick up whatever you want, and you put one in your sideboard, or I guess like you're not playing it, right? and then like you play against someone who is playing a Quake or a Horrible or something like that, and so you really, really need to focus on mitigating non-attack damage. So bringing in the second one looks really good in that instance. I think the only cards that like I've really wanted to bring in from my sideboard have been, maybe I sometimes want to like up the number of black pips that are in my deck, or sometimes I want to up the number of black pips that are in my deck, and also I brought in a regenerative core in one match just because I needed any kind of instance of healing I could possibly get. And regenerative core, like you mentioned earlier, Kai, did technically do that for a little bit. It was really good for me when I drew it and played it, but also like, I don't know, it felt kind of bad to include anyway. So maybe, Joel, maybe you have a point. Maybe this set it's not as easy to do, but I felt like in wave 3, wave 4, I did it a lot more. Maybe I'm just like wishful thinking. Maybe I have rose-tinted glasses looking back at it, but that's kind of my opinion.
Cool. I have nothing to add to what y'all said. I think y'all, like, all three of you covered everything that I was thinking about saying. Like, okay, Kai hit it first. I was like, well, all right, can't say that. And then Joel, and then you. So, yep.
That'll happen. It happens. Don't worry about it.
It does.
Before we let people go, we do have viewer question, which occasionally this takes forever, so who knows, right? But we are really happy about this, actually. I don't think we've gotten like the time at the end of the last couple of weeks, like the interviews, to really have any kind of address to a viewer question. So it's nice to be able to return to something like that, because I think it's pretty safe to say that this is one of our favorite parts of every week when we get to do this.
Yeah,
Generally,
I love this.
Yeah. So this week's question comes from Bendy the Monkey. I don't believe that's their real name, but they ask, I'd like to know which character that looks weak, like on the outside or on paper, but can actually be decent in the right deck. And I think that the context is that this is in the Wave 5 metagame. So it doesn't have to be a Wave 5 character, but like somebody in the context of Wave 5.
Well, I think one that looks really, really bad up front, but could eventually be good would be Autobot Whirl. He has a lot of attack, he has a lot of health. His ability to deal damage by flipping a blue pip seems nice. He seems really weak because he has 0 defense. So I'm going to go back on that, and he's terrible. Autobot Whirl is horrible. Actually, no, he's not horrible. Oh, I'm sorry, he's not horrible. He's just terrible. I mean, for 12 stars, you can do much better. And if you want to throw a stratagem in there, boy, I would really rather play Battlefield Legend over Autobot Whirl. And I don't think anybody's playing Battlefield Legend right now. So yeah, Whirl is not my real answer. Let's see. Who would my real answer be? I actually think that Wind Charger. Yes, he's another SRT. Looks like not that good, just because the stats aren't amazing. But since he's just a 7-star character, or 8 if you play a stratagem, he can really pack a wallop. And I think that the ability to draw a card is very, very useful. It's obviously been used in cards before, but you don't have to be playing Cliff Jumper to be drawing a card with Wind Charger.
Okay. Let's see. I guess technically I'm next in order. I was looking today. I ordered a Trax in the mail of a TCG player, and it came in. And so I think I even posted this question in our group chat about, like, do you guys think that Trax could potentially be good? Just because I think that he's not that flip intensive and gets access to non-combat damage. He's only 9 stars for 13 health, which is really pretty solid. Like outside of maybe Topspin, I think it's probably the best we've got for 9 stars, with the exception of if you count what's his face, Fangry plus Grax, which would be 9 stars. He'd be 16 health, which would be absolutely insane. But that's not the point. I think that's pretty solid. He's got reasonable attack numbers, and he does kind of the thing that you really need to have happen in this wave, which is you have to have more than one viable attacker. And since in his bot mode, he's a 5 attack with the ability to deal non-combat damage to somebody, then he by himself is going to be a relevant attacker. And when you flip him back, you have to have somebody that shares a trait with him in order for them to get +2. But +2 is no joke to just get out of your flip like before you even play an action, right? If you have a weapon plus you play an action that buffs attack, the next person that attacks is going to be swinging for like a serious amount. And I think that's not something that you can really ignore. I do think that it does mean your first couple of turns are going to be pretty flip intensive, but that's not the first time that that's happened with a lineup. I think the one thing that's really a detractor for him is the fact that he's an Autobot, which means he's susceptible to both the combined trigger, also Sky Shadow, and the double damage portion from Mag Ray. But outside of that kind of one issue with the direct damage thing, I think the Trax might have more legs than people have been giving him credit for.
Yeah, one card I want to really go back to that I haven't been able to play for a while, I just haven't spent any time with, but is Soundwave Communications from the Blaster vs. Soundwave. I mean, I think that, I don't know, I really like the idea of like just selecting a card from their hand and getting rid of it. Like you're playing against Sky Shadow Horrible or Sky Shadow Perceptor, and it's like, oh, you don't need that piece through tyranny. Or you're playing against Sky Shadow Horrible because that's like the only deck out there. And yeah, you don't need that Cayman Crash. You don't need the Fusion Borer. Something like that. And I think that now that there's more ways to look at what card is on top of their deck, like with Skywarp from Wave 1 and Soundwave Communications, like it makes something like Paralyzo Box just nuts. You know, and that can make all your little guys that you're playing with Soundwave, and including Soundwave himself, because he only has 4 base attack, can make them actually really relevant, you know, and you add in Leap into Battle, or, you know, maybe you've got a Master Sword floating in there too, and you're using your handheld blasters and Scoundrel blasters to, you know, feed the Master Sword. In the various ways that it requires. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's, you know, busted or anything, but it is something that I want to revisit.
So for me, I think Brainstorm is probably like the one that I'm oddly enough most interested in, mainly because of he's really busted in Sealed. So if you pull him, try and play him if possible. But also just his abilities with upgrades is very unique and interesting because he's field communicated when you flip to alt to play mode, and then when he's in body mode, he's kind of a cheaper Galaxy Optimist, sort of. All you have to do is flip the upgrade, but you don't get to play, you get to add it to your hand. So I think if we get more powerful upgrades along the line of Master Sword and or Ghost Shield, I think Brainstorm could really pick up use. But I think right now there are pretty decent cards that you could use with him, like Nitro Booster is pretty powerful, or Master Sword and Ghost Shield. So I think he has some use, but right now I'm just not too sure where to go with them other than those points.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm actually intrigued by most of those. I was actually pretty sure, Joel, that you were going to mention the Healing Optimist from this wave, but I'm kind of happy you didn't, because I feel like we kind of talked that character, not to death, but we talked a lot about like the nuances of that character and when they can be good, or he can be good, during our character post-mortem episode. But on that note, that brings us to the close of episode 17 of the Transform Your Game podcast. I just wanted to reiterate one more time how much we appreciate all of you out there in the ether listening to us. Whatever platform you're on, you can find our other episodes and future ones down the line on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify. There most certainly will be links in the description to help you out on that front. And if you found the input and information here valuable, you can find more strategy, analysis, tournament reports, and more like it at transformyourgame.net. And we look forward to being back to speak to all y'all next week. But until that time, clear eyes, flip lots, can't lose.